Can I ask you a little bit about the way that you constructed your own family and career pathway? Because I've been working with my wife trying to sketch out, she does a podcast on issues related to femininity. And we've been trying to sketch out, at least hypothetically, something like a appropriate timeline for young women, because they have no real guidance in that. So here's a stat for you. We hit this milestone last year. Half of Western women 30 and under have no child.
Jeez.
So it's a little more than half now. Jeez. So we hit more than half. Half of them will never have a child. And 90% of them will regret it. Mm-hmm. That means we're setting up. This is a catastrophe. This is a catastrophe if it's crazy. True. And the data are pretty clear, I believe. This means we're setting up 1 woman in 4 for isolation. Right. And that gets increasingly brutal as you get older.
What's really interesting? Why do we assume that we're setting them up for something? Why isn't it their individual responsibility to seek out a man and seek out a relationship, a meaningful relationship, and then have children? Because from my understanding of women, any woman can find a man that will love them and give them what they want. Most women that I know a man that is willing to take care of them and be the man they want them to be. They just don't want that man. So why is it like our responsibility to say we're setting them up for this to be the case? No, they're kind of setting themselves up for that to be the case. It's an active decision that they're making as grown adults.
And I also think we're setting up that 25% of women to be preyed upon in a manner like nothing we've ever seen when they enter their later years, because they'll have no one to keep an eye out for them, especially during times of vulnerability. Yeah. This is not going to be good. So
I guess my bigger question is, if they don't care, why should I care about their results? If me saying women should probably prioritize family and relationships, and that'll probably give them more fulfillment and happiness makes me a misogynist, and I'm demonized for even saying those things, why is it my responsibility then to save women from their own decisions? Don't they have autonomy? Aren't they strong and independent? Can't they make their own decisions? If that's the case, then they're deciding to make this decision. We can't have it both ways. They want autonomy. That's fine. Women should be equal to men. Women can do anything a man can do, but then also play the violin anytime women decide to make bad decisions for themselves.
Well, let me sketch out an idea for you in terms of a timeline and tell me what you think about that. I mean, 1 couple in 3 have fertility problems by the age of 30.
Wow.
And that's defined as not being able to conceive within a year of trying.
Right.
And so it seems pretty obvious. All assistive reproductive technology notwithstanding, which is very expensive and very unreliable and certainly not something to be depended on except in cases of absolute necessity. Having your children before you're 30 is a wise move if you want to ensure that it's going to happen. And so then the question is order. We're best served probably as human beings to have our children in our 20s and probably our early 20s. And of course, that's going to be more demanding for women, more demanding and more of an opportunity, I would say, because each child really requires something approximating 3 years of pretty dedicated care. The data seem to show that if your child is 3 and reasonably social, then social education, daycare, can work. Before that, especially with transformation of caregivers, it doesn't look like it's a very good idea. So you need 3 years per child. And maybe you want 2 children or 3 children. And so that's something like, 5 or 6 years that you have to devote to it. Now, women live about 6 or 7 years longer than men. So that's kind of an interesting little twist on the whole situation. And if you started your career at 30, you could have 40 years of career, which is a lot. And that way, I would say, in some ways, you get to have your cake and eat it too, although perhaps not at the same time, which we had talked about early.
This is that weird thing where like these people who get like us, people who get to get behind microphones, we sit here and we talk about careers and all these. Most people aren't working careers. Most people. There are a lot of people that are working jobs. There are a lot of women that are just working at the DMV, making it hard for me to get my ID, giving me attitude. There are a lot of women that are folding pans. There are a lot of women that are managers at Burger King. And these women aren't necessarily getting a sense of fulfillment from their jobs per se, but they're doing them because they've been told that this is the route that they should take. And by the way, it's the route that they want to take. They want to be able to have their own money and prioritize their own sense of living. And so I can't bat an eye. But the issue is we have this mindset of like, oh, you're going to start your career at 30. But it's like most people don't have careers. Most people just have jobs that they have to do out of necessity, not these passionate things, not these careers that they're passionate about. That's very, very rare that you get that.
There are no real guidelines developmentally for young women, and they don't know what to do, and they're increasingly not married, and they increasingly don't have children, and they're increasingly unhappy.
That was all the purpose of religion, by the way, giving you a guideline for how you ought to live or should live in order to have it's a strict guideline that tells you exactly what you should do in life. And I know there are going to be a lot of atheists in the comments, blah, blah, bloop, we get it. But what I'm saying is I think religion gave people a good sense of direction and a good sense of fulfillment. And it was better for people to start off that way than to try to find those things, because oftentimes it's very hard to find those things.
And it doesn't look to me like slave to a corporation is necessarily a substitute for family life and children.
No, it isn't.
Now, some people have a career. You have a career. Some people have a career. Most people have jobs. So anyways, I'm not saying that that's a hard and fast rule, but I don't really see any way around it. And here's another little twist that is worth adding. I think most people who are popular and attractive get 5 chances to establish a permanent relationship, and that's about it.
That's fascinating.
Right?
That's
well,
interesting.
figure it's a year to kind of get to know someone.
Yeah.
And then assume that, you're fortunate enough so that people are lining up, which is not that likely and probably not the position that most people are in.
Right.
And so maybe it's 2 years, including the failure, and 5 is a 10-year span. I'm not trying to be overwhelmingly pessimistic, but I wouldn't say it gets easier as you get older. You get more different from other people. It isn't easier to establish a relationship when you're older, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, it becomes significantly harder, especially for women, because they want more from the men. But all the men who have all the things that they want either have other women already, or they're already married, or they're just entertaining multiple women at the same time. So like I know a lot of women that are in these scenarios where they're in their 30s now and they're looking for somebody. But like Jordan is saying here, it takes 1 year. Like you got to get to know them. You got to court each other. If you're doing it the right way, you got to get married. All this stuff takes time. Like to get to know somebody, to court somebody. And if you start doing that at 30 years old, by the time you actually talk about or even consider actually having children, you probably already 32, 33 years old. And that's if everything goes at the pace you probably, like the ideal pace, right? So there are a lot of issues because women want more from the guys, and the guys who have the things that they want are oftentimes either entertaining multiple women or they're already married. So I see that as a big issue. And also the men who are entertaining other women who may be available, if they do choose to settle down with a woman, they're not going to choose the women who are already 30, because the women who are already 30 understand they have a biological clock. So they get the pressure in these guys to go right into the relationship, go into the marriage, as they should, because they need to have kids before a certain time period is up. But the guys who are 32, 33, they're just choosing to date women that are 27. They're just going, I don't want to be rushed in the relationship, so I'm just going to date a woman that's 27. Beard's already grown in. Brother got a 401k set away. He's getting into his financial stride. Got everything going a little bit more structured in his life. And now the women want him. But since the women want him now, he's going to choose to go with the 27-year-old. So absolutely, dating definitely gets harder as you get older. Your expectations go up. It becomes harder to adapt to another person because you're already used to a certain lifestyle and a certain way of thinking. Yeah, it does.
More
get
people are snatched up.
Well, there's that. That's a big problem, who's left. And the other issue I would say, too, that's germane is why wouldn't you want to spend your young years with the person that you want to be with? You know, you're going to forestall that for what reason? You know, I got married to Tammy when I was 27, I think. And one of our regrets is that we didn't do that earlier. Now, there were reasons for that, and maybe they were valid. Probably they weren't. But I'm not happy that that time was missed. It would have been better to have spent it together. So I'd like your thoughts on that. I mean, the timeline, just that general layout.
I mean, I think there's no problem in setting out those honest truths, which are your life will be happier if you have a partner and children. I just think that's just true. And people should be told that. And then they should be told the realities of fertility, because those are realities that, you know, can be potentially meddled with, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
if you're one of the people who cannot meddle with it and you missed your window, it will be a lifelong regret that will be unsolvable and will be like a deep source of pain, an ongoing deep source of pain. So it's not something that you could easily brush off. And so all those truths need to be shared while at the same time prizing and sharing the fullness of the rewards of motherhood with young women, which isn't done.
Yeah.
That's the other piece of it. Like if you listen to Jordan, if you listen to Ben, if you listen to, you know, the Daily Wire, you'll hear that. You won't hear motherhood, early motherhood, or any kind of motherhood generally bashed. You'll hear it praised. But in society still, in the movies, on the television shows that women watch, it's not. You still hear she's just a stay-at-home mom.
But who's doing that, though? Who's doing that? I've never met a man in my life that looked down on a woman who served her family. I've never, ever seen that in my entire life. In fact, I see men who really uplift those women and start to and see the value in those women. They truly cherish very feminine women. Men do. So who are the ones that are saying that you're just a mom? I've had these debates with feminists on TikTok before, talking to them, and they said that women who have children are slaves. You're not a slave for taking care of your own family. That doesn't make you a slave. In what world does that make you a slave? But that's the feminist mindset. No man, you've never heard any man shame a woman for catering to her family or catering to her man. You've never, ever heard that from a man before. Let's just be honest here. That all comes from the feminists. The feminists are the biggest misogynists because they only see value in women if women take on traditionally masculine traits.
They still don't look at, you know, motherhood as something that's, you know, something valuable, like work, as though it's a bad word.
And so that's the issue, though. When there's a female issue, specifically female issue that women need to be accountable for, it's always a they or people. People don't respect moms. No, feminists don't respect moms. That's the issue. Oh, we're pushing them to go down this direction. This is Jordan Peterson earlier. We're pushing them to go down this direction. This is going to be a huge mistake for everybody. We're not pushing anything. I'm not accountable for them making their own decisions with the autonomy that they fought for as women. So we're not responsible for anything. This is their own personal decision. But that's part of the issue, though. When we're talking about things that female or women in general should be accountable for, oftentimes there's a push to blame our entire society when really it's just a decision that the women are deciding to make. And they fought hard to have the right to make their own decisions. And when they're making these decisions, you see that some of them will have sabotage. And if that's what they want to do, why are we why are we accountable for saving them from their own decisions that they don't want to be saved from, by the way?
Motherhood is work too. It's great work. It's life-fulfilling work. But it still has this like, and women who I know all over New York, and now I'm in Connecticut, they say things like, it's very important to me that my daughter see me going to a business meeting. Like, mommy's got a business meeting, or going to the office if they have just like some small meeting. And I'm like, why? Why? Because they don't think the daughter will think that they're important if they don't have some sort of business pressing on them, which is absurd and hashtag part of the
Literally
problem.
retarded
Right? Like,
people.
No, we all need to be teaching young girls and boys that motherhood is enough. Like, being a mother is a completely valid, beautiful, awesome, really important choice. I actually went to my daughter's school and I said, I think it's fine you have career night. It's an all-girls school. And you bring in doctors and lawyers and journalists and whomever. You need to bring in a stay-at-home mom. You need to have somebody stand up there and tell the girls, I made a totally different choice. And so much the better if she's got a great education. And she can say, yeah, I have all the same skills you have. And I was on the exact same path as you were. And I loved learning and being introduced to the classics and being able to sit around a dinner table with so-called intellectuals and know the references. And I chose a totally different path when I graduated from those schools, because there was one thing that was most important to me. And let me tell you how that's rewarded me. The school did not do it. Okay. So, we've got a counter program at home. So having said all that, I'll tell you my own personal experience, which doesn't really reflect that way of thinking or this recommended course at all. And yet still, I'm very, very happy. I'm a very contented person. Happy is a charged word, but I really am very happy with my life. I'm contented. I have a very, very strong marriage and extremely intact, loving, present, and meaningful relationships with my 3 kids. But I also have a very large career that's been hugely successful. Not to be self-aggrandizing, I'm just saying, like, on the scales of careers, mine has worked out very well. So in no way did I really sacrifice much in that lane. And I realize this puts me in the 0.00001% of people, and probably even, fewer percent of women. So the way that I did it was not that unconventional for, when I grew up. I was definitely part of a generation that felt you work, you get to work, you graduate from college, go to college, but when you finish college, you work. That's the thing you do. But in my case, Jordan, from that day to this, I've always loved working. I love it. It's totally exciting and interesting and intellectually stimulating to me. And I cannot imagine not doing this. It's been really important to me. And if I looked at the 21 or 22-year-old version of me versus me now, or let's say when I had my kids, which was later, 38, 40, and 42, I guarantee you, I personally, this isn't true of everybody, but I personally would not have been anywhere near as good a mother. I was much more selfish and less capable of giving.
My goodness.
I was more of a taker.
Oh,
like
yeah.
most young
Career
people are.
teaches
Not
you to
all,
be
but most.
less of a taker.
And so I really think that the calm I've brought to motherhood, the life lessons, the wisdom, has been a boon to my children, who are calm and cool and not panickers, and have a wisdom about them that I think you kind of get through osmosis and maybe some genetics. But they're in a very good place, I think, in part thanks to the fact that it's not age related for everybody, but for me, I didn't reach that place in my life until I was older. And unfortunately, it wasn't planned this way, because I didn't meet my husband until we were 35. But unfortunately, and believe me, I think about it all the time, it means that my children and I have a shorter runway together. And I hate that fact. It haunts me. I'm so grateful that I have them at all, unlike so many women who weren't this fortunate. But I hate the fact that every time we talk about their lives, I'm calculating, it's his age plus 42. That's what I'll be, when my youngest has his children.
42? She had a kid at 42?
My kids better have kids young if they want me to be part of that child's life at all. If they want, if I get to be a grandparent. And it's its own special form of pain, Like, would I have traded my career building and doing the things that I love? Because I was a lawyer for the first 10 years and then I switched to journalism. I don't know if I can say that. I didn't meet the right man until I was 35.
There it goes. Her decision was a man's fault. We got to start it off with that. And the second part of it is, this is the part that exposes you as a feminist. Because you're just talking about me, 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 me. Everything is about me and I and my career and everything for me. The thing is, women have always been in the workforce. Women have always been doctors, teachers. Women have always been nurses specifically. Women have always worked in daycare fields. Women have always been in the workforce. It's just those women did so with the priority of family in mind, not with the priority of how can I benefit me, 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 me in mind. The what makes you a feminist in the modern terms, part of it is also prioritizing career over family, of course, but part of prioritizing career over family is even when you have your career, you're not doing so to benefit your family. You're doing so to benefit yourself and to seek out your own, whatever your opportunity, whatever the thing is you're trying to do for yourself. Oftentimes for men, a career is not a means to an end. It's a necessity. We do it because we want to provide a life for our families. We don't do it because we're passionate about it or because we love it. We do it because we want to provide a lifestyle for our families. So even when we go take on these careers and we become ambitious and we try to do more and more and more, oftentimes it's for our family. But when you hear like feminists talk about why they pursue their career or why they forego family in order to, especially conservative feminists, Megyn Kelly is a conservative feminist, by the way. That's where I'm going with this. But when you hear them talk about their careers, they oftentimes will admit to you that they're doing their careers for themselves and putting family on the back burner. And that in and of itself is feminism. It's not wrong or necessarily feminism because you need to work as a woman, especially in this economy. But it's what are your intentions with you working? Are you working to save money so that you don't become tied down to your husband? And if he leaves you, which men don't leave relationships. Women leave at about a 72% rate. Women are the ones filing for divorce. So they're really just preparing an egg S or S. What's it called? An egg. Basically, they're preparing to leave the relationship when they're working these careers and they don't want to put anything towards the family. And then they come home tired. Then they shame the man into being the one that does the domestic labor and also paying the bills while they prioritize themselves and saving money for their own self-preservation, just in case, of course, something happens to the family. So that's what makes you a feminist. And that's what I think makes Megyn Kelly a feminist. She put her family on the back burner for the pursuit of her career. And I think that's what makes you a feminist.
Doug had come into my life at 22 and I rejected him. And then we went and married different people and refound each other at 35. That would be really painful. But I don't have that regret. We didn't meet until the time I think God brought us together. And for me, that was the time. That's when I was ready. I was ready to not downshift in my career exactly, but to make compromises in my career that I hadn't been prior to that. And I was fully committed to devoting myself to motherhood in a way I never had been before. And some of it was born of the intense love that I had for my husband and still have, in which my kids were born into, this swath of like truly mad romantic love that they're products of.
And still the same selfishness, but she's justifying the selfishness by saying it worked out. Still prioritizing the sense of self, your own career, whatever you want, whatever, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm still prioritizing a sense of self, but because it worked out, she's kind of going, I guess I don't regret it because it worked out, basically.
Immersed in every day, which is probably the best medicine for them. So I have no regrets about how I did it, but I also acknowledge it's not all roses and unicorns. There are downsides to doing it the way I did.
Yeah, well, our culture is so youth obsessed, and I suppose that came out of consumer culture in the 1960s when, for the first time in human history, young people had excess money to spend and could be, marketed at. We tend to construe, especially in popular culture, life as if you're old by the time you're 30.
Right.
And
Jordan, when I broke into journalism, I was 32, and I thought, I'll never be accepted in this business. I'm too old. I will have no future in this industry. It was like so silly.
That turned out to be wrong. Yeah. Well, but that's why it's so useful to start a discussion, let's say, about the actual span of life. I mean, you said that one of your potential regrets, is that, you've truncated the time that you'll have as a grandmother, let's say.
Yeah.
And you took advantage of that when you were young, and there was some utility in that for you, but that is a price that is lurking, and it's very difficult to tell how it will play out. But as a pattern, it's something for people to give some consideration to. You optimally, you want to be a grandparent when you're still youthful enough to be active and engaged, and then you get to have the pleasures of having children again. And that's a pretty good deal. And it is something, like, we're not good at conceptualizing the entire span of life consciously. That's what roles were for. So you didn't actually have to think about that. But we have to think about it now.
Yep.
There's another perversity in this that I really have a hard time figuring out, because I would say that by and large, the feminist movement that's at the bottom of some of the things we're talking about has been a left-wing movement. And I do not understand for the life of me how in the world it can be logically coherent that the left can be anti-capitalist, anti-corporate, and pro-career.
Exactly. That's why I said feminism is just corporatism or capitalism with man-hating. That's essentially what it is. It's corporatism or capitalism with man-hating.
Like, I just
Interesting.
can't. Yeah, so there's that. So we could talk about that for a bit. It's like, okay, corporations are evil and there isn't any higher purpose you can serve as a woman than to serve one.
Exactly. They tell you we're going to destroy the patriarchy and tear down the patriarchy by literally being a part of the patriarchy.
Like,
so
okay, I'm not
true.
exactly sure what to make of that.
Now what?
Then I want to tell you a weird little story too. I was looking at the Brothers Grimm Snow White version recently because I went and saw the Disney Snow White version, which, you know, was exactly the sort of mistake that you'd think it would be, both to attend and to produce. And so I want to just tell you a snippet of that story. So Snow White is young and beautiful, and the evil queen wants that, right? So she's an older woman who is competing with the younger woman for the younger woman's advantages.
Yeah, you
the
see
evil
that a lot.
queen. Okay, now Snow White has
Yeah,
to.
you go on TikTok, that's all you see is older women doing the same dances, trying to put on the makeup, do exactly what the younger women are doing to compete with younger women for the men. And I think that's part of the reason why the older women pretty much tell the younger women to crash out. I think it's a mating thing. I think they're doing it because it gives them more opportunity and more options by sabotaging the younger woman. And I think that women highly underestimate the resentment that other women can have for them, and the fact that other women can say things and do things that are against their best interests and sabotage their situation.
To run away from the evil queen. Right. And where does she go? Well, she goes out into the forest, which is the unknown, but she goes to where the dwarfs are. Now, in the Grimm's brother fairy tale, the dwarfs don't have names, so they're kind of generic. But they keep an orderly house and they work very hard. So the Grimm brothers dwarfs, now we don't know how old these fairy tales are, by the way. There have been some folklorists who've traced some fairy tales back like 10,000 years. They're very old. Okay, so it's wisdom speaking, you could say. So Snow White goes to what? To serve the dwarves. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that to escape the evil queen, she has to make a pact with ordinary masculinity, right? She has to serve the dwarfs. Now, why? Because they protect her from the evil queen. Now, among primates, there is a phenomenon called fertility suppression, which is where women compete, the females compete to suppress the fertility of other females.
Yeah, and there was actually a study on this too that was done where it was like something like women were going into a hair salon, and one of y'all can look it up, and if you want to look it up, just Google it. You'll be able to find it if you just type in some of the context of what I'm saying. There was a study that went on talking about women going to a hair salon, and the prettier the woman is in terms of some beauty metric, I think they're using face symmetry. So they're talking about the prettier the woman was going into this hair salon, the more the women in the hair salon would recommend that they got cut off of their hair cut off. So say if there was a woman who was more pretty, the women or the women who are cutting their hair would recommend that they would cut more hair off than other women that they didn't see as pretty, according to their symmetry, their face symmetry. But basically, women who are not attractive are telling women who are attractive to make bad decisions in order to make it so that they can compete with them. And I think that that's part of the issue with modesty too. I think the reason why you will never see modesty you might see it come back, but it's going to take a while. Part of the reason why there's such a huge fight against modesty is because if everybody has to be modest, then women who are not as attractive can't compete as well for the attention of men as women who are attractive.
And it's a very widespread phenomenon that's well known among primatologists and biologists, and it definitely characterizes human beings. And so the evil queen in the Snow White story is suppressing the fertility of Snow White. Now, she runs away from that and takes shelter among the ordinary men, the dwarves, let's say, who are the positive side of the patriarchy, you might say it that way. When the evil queen comes back, she shows up again, right? And she offers Snow White 3 gifts. The first is a bodice that's too tight and just about strangles her. So that's exaggeration of sex. It's a narcissistic exaggeration of sexuality as a temptation.
Modesty, yep.
The second is a
Not being
poisoned
modest.
comb. right? Same thing in slightly different guys, right? Right. She's tempting Snow White to be poisoned by the worship of her own beauty. That's a good way of thinking about it. That's what the evil queen does. The third gift is the poisoned apple. Now, of course, that harkens back to the Genesis story. Anything you incorporate is something that changes you. It's like you incorporate knowledge. And so it's poisoned knowledge. And the dwarfs can't save her from that. And that's the situation young women are in the modern world, because the evil queen feeds them poisoned knowledge. And the deep question is why? And the real skeptic would say, well, the older, jealous, childless women are doing absolutely everything they can to destroy the fertility of young women. Now, there's a corollary to that, which is this happened to Ayaan Hirsi Ali, for example. It's often the women in these brutally patriarchal societies who enforce the worst impositions on young women, like female genital mutilation, for example, is often a practice conducted by grandmothers.
Ayaan knows about that.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so there's a brutality in this, a brutality in the, and I think you see it taken to its logical conclusion, by the way.
Jordan Peterson out here spitting facts, and Megyn Kelly is a feminist, and feminism is pretty much just being irresponsible and selfish. Let me know in the comments below if this video was a WRL, and give me the HBO special. That's help brother out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Till next time.